We begin with a happy Lag BaOmer to everybody. Being that there may be some people who don't know what Lag BaOmer is, I don't know about this room, but out in cyberspace, I'm sure there's one or two people on Earth that don't yet know what it is. You agree? So I'll just describe it, and then go right into the theme, which is to discover your inside story is the title of this class, a Lag BaOmer workshop. So the word Lag BaOmer literally, Lag is in Hebrew 33. And there's the 33rd day of the Omer. The Omer refers to a counting that we do in the period between Passover and Shavuot. Now I know some people may not know what Passover and Shavuot is, so I guess I have to begin from the beginning. But Passover and Shavuot are two holidays that the Bible mandates to be celebrated. Passover, of course, honors the exodus from Egypt. Shavuot honors the time when we received the Torah. But actually, in the Torah, in the Bible, it doesn't really talk about it that way. It talks about it as the 50th day from Passover. So the second night of Passover, we begin a counting, something we read last Shabbos in the reading. It says from the second day of Passover, we begin a 49-day counting, 7 times 7, 7 weeks. It says you should count 7 weeks, and 7 times 7, 49 days. And on the 50th day will be the next holiday called Shavuot. And we are now in that period of time, so this is the 33rd day of the 49 days, basically. With 16 more days to go, essentially. That's 49 minus 33. So that's technically why this day is called Lag BaOmer. But what makes it unique is two facts. One is that on this day is the yahrzeit, the passing of one of the greatest sages, Talmudic sages, as well as maybe the greatest mystic of all, Jewish mystic, or all mystics. His name is Rabbi Shimon bar or ben Yochai. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai means Shimon, the son of Yochai. And sometimes bar Yochai is in Aramaic what ben is. Ben means son of, bar is an Aramaic son. And sometimes used the acronym, you hear Rashbi. Rashbi is an acronym, 4 Hebrew letters, that's Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. So he was both a great Talmudic sage and as well as a great mystic. And he is attributed, he's considered to be the author of the famous Zohar, the book of splendor or the book of light or the book of different names people give the word Zohar. But it's the classic work of Jewish mysticism, which is the basis of all the mystical teachings that follow afterwards, called the Kabbalah. So he would be like the father of all Kabbalists, if you want to put it that way. And today, on this day, tonight, tomorrow, is the day he passed away in Israel. And there's actually an entire section in the Zohar dedicated to his passing and the events that happened that day. And one of the things that he requested of his students, on that day he says, this is the day that I connect deeper than ever with God, and therefore I want this to be a day of joy. Not a day of mourning, but a day of joy. So obviously they must have fulfilled the laws of Shiva and grieved for their great master and teacher, but in the years that came, it became a considered. Rashbi specifically asked that it to be a simcha, a day of simcha, joy, became a day of joy. What's interesting is not only is it a day of joy, it's one of the biggest pilgrimages in Israel. You could see it online already tonight. Israel is now 7 hours ahead, so online, literally hundreds of thousands of Jews gather in Miron, which is in northern Israel. If you know Tzfat, it's a little south of Tzfat, basically in the northern Galilee. And there it is in Miron is where his gravesite is. So you have literally hundreds of thousands of people. They celebrate all night, and they dance and sing and light bonfires, many different customs. So you have Sephardim there, you have Ashkenazim there, you have Hasidim, you have non-Hasidim, you have Litva, you have the whole gamut, the whole spectrum of a lot of people travel there. And it's all honoring, this is the reason, because he asked that it be a day of joy. Which of course begs the question, why is he different than all the others? Rabbi Akiva was his teacher, maybe the greatest sage of them all, and some people don't even know when his yahrzeit is. And here we have, which we'll talk about a bit as well. The second thing that happened on this day is, during this period in time, there was a epidemic in the times of the Talmud. The 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva, I mentioned Rabbi Akiva, was a great sage. His student was one of them. Students was Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, but he had other students, and the students got into conflict with each other. The expression of the Talmud is leinogu kavod zeh b'zeh. They did not show respect for one another. They did not show respect. And as a result, because they were such great students, they died in an epidemic. Because in Judaism, one of the worst possible diseases is more than cancer and more than heart disease is divisiveness. Divisiveness, because divisiveness is up to us. And it was up to them, and though they were great students, but they were so great they could not tolerate each other. Sometimes you have people who are brilliant, and they have no room for another. So it was their greatness that ended up causing them to feud, and it was an epidemic, which is why we don't make weddings and celebrations during this counting of the Omer period. But Lag BaOmer, this epidemic stopped. So it became a joyous occasion because this terrible thing that took place then in the time of the Talmud stopped. And it's not disconnected because Rav Shimon bar Yochai was one of the students, but he was not one of those that died because he did not get involved in this big conflict. So these two things are connected to one another, and as we shall soon discuss more in detail, all connected to, of course, what is the lesson to us is very obvious. How much we have to distance ourselves from arguments and personal. You can disagree with someone, but it can be done with love. Brothers and sisters may disagree, but that doesn't mean they hate each other. You don't personalize it. So how much we have to avoid and refrain from any type of personalization and conflict, and how destructive that is to each of us. It's a disease of the soul, conflict and divisiveness, and how we have to embrace its antithesis, which is love. Unconditional love for each other. Now, I know it's a very basic lesson, but the fact is, if the human race was able to embrace this, we wouldn't have all our problems. We wouldn't have war, and we wouldn't have discord, and we wouldn't have injustice, and we'd have a world of, you can say, a messianic world of peace. So as much as we all like to say we would love it, and someone else is the problem, the fact of the matter is we live in a world that has plenty of divisiveness, and I'm sure each of us in our own little communities can find ways to enhance the brotherhood or the love and so on. And as I said, I'll talk about that even though it's not the central theme, but it has a connection to the theme that we're going to discuss. So that's Lag BaOmer, the technical, historical event that took place and why today is a special day. They have a holiday, essentially. It's not a holiday where you don't drive or work like Shabbat with other holidays, but it's nevertheless a day of celebration. But what begs the question, of course, is why Rashbi of all sages? Why did he merit that it's literally almost 2,000 years since he lived, a little less than 2,000 years, 1,800 years, 1,900, that he merited that his day should be remembered in such a way that literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people honor it, as I am doing right now. And what lessons does that have for us today? Which of course also connect with the second event of the honoring of each other or the lack of thereof, God forbid. So I titled the class, Discover Your Inside Story, because in a way you can see this as somewhat of a sequel to last week's discussion. So even though you may or may not have been here, or you may have heard it online, you could always listen to it. It's archived at meaningfullife.com. But nevertheless, it is still a self-contained class. You don't have to know what was discussed last week to be able to benefit from what I'm going to say now. But on the other hand, it is a second part, and it's a continuation. So one of the things I spoke about last week is, which I will begin here, is that understanding our own life narrative. It's one of the most, we all have our challenges, we all have our difficulties, we have what we call issues, and we all find our different ways to resolving these issues. And usually we deal with them as they come. Very few people really anticipate or preempt problems. Because when things are going well, the nature of the human being is we become complacent and we're satisfied with our status quo, what we call comfort zone. It's when things don't go well, that's when we suddenly have to say, you know what, like they say, if it ain't broken, why fix it? But the fact of the matter is there are things in our lives that we may not know are broken, and it just takes time and it suddenly emerges. But we deal with things as they come. If it's going to rain this morning, you hear it's raining, so you'll put on a raincoat, an umbrella. I'm talking about, it's a simple example. Something happens at work that's troubling, you're fired, let's say, God forbid. or in the area of relationships and more personal things, as issues come up, that's when we deal with them. However, we all understand logically that the best way really to deal with problems is what's called preventive medicine, to preempt them in the first place. Those are the best solutions. But it's usually not the way we work, because we are people that live in the here and now. Let's be honest, that's how we live. We deal with things as they come. When they say in the Talmud, it says, Ezu chochem haroya es hanoiled. Have you heard this expression? Who is the wise person? The one that sees the birthing, which really means the one who sees ahead. People who plan ahead. People who have like a bird's eye view, a vision of tomorrow, of next 5 years, have a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan. There's a name for a person like this, called a wise person. Not everybody's wise. We may have wisdom, but that doesn't make us wise. A wise person acts on that wisdom. So wisdom is you preempt, you look ahead, you don't wait. For example, many people let's just deal with the most basic issue of all. I once went to speak one of my speaking engagements, so the event coordinator asked me, so what are the topics that are most popular today? I said, that topics popular today were popular 20 years ago too, and will be popular forever. The top two of all the top 10 topics are, the first is love, sexuality, relationships, marriage. And number 2, in that list, guaranteed, is pain and suffering. So I remember on the phone she says to me, those aren't 2 topics, it's the same thing. So it's love and pain and suffering. So I guess for some people it's 2 edges, a double-edged sword. I'm not suggesting that's the case, but I'm just telling you that. Remember that it was a humorous, or maybe not so humorous anecdote. So in speaking about relationships, which is always something that is always relevant, because everybody is either in a relationship, or out of a relationship, or wanting a relationship, or in a bad one, or in a good one, or trying to get out of a bad one. So somewhere, I just said the whole spectrum. You fit in somewhere, right? So without getting into, you fill in the blanks. So in that context, it's always a good topic to talk about, because it's relevant to everybody. Because we all need love, and we all need nurturing, and we need companionship, and we need intimacy. Human being, that's a natural, healthy human being. The question is whether we have it, whether we have a healthy form of it. That varies. But that's definitely a given that we as human beings, like it says in the Bible, it's not good for a person to be alone. And that's the way God created man and woman. It's 2 halves and wanting to cleave, wanting to connect and find each other. Soulmates, we call it. So using the context of relationships, what is, of course, the healthiest way to build a healthy relationship? Very obvious answer. Bring up children healthy from the youngest of age, and they will most likely have healthy relationships. Bring up children in unhealthy homes where they don't have role models of what love is, of what healthy love is, what acceptance is, how to deal with problems, how to deal with conflict. Then you're more likely going to have someone's going to have more difficulties. Is it a guarantee? No, there are people who grow up in healthy homes and still have issues with relationships, but it's the single most direct factor that will determine whether a person will have healthy love and healthy marriage or not is what kind of childhood they had. Again, it's not the only factor, but it's the single largest factor. However, when you start meeting people, and I meet people once already, they're already dealing with a difficulty. And then you start discovering that they had a very bad childhood, and they had parents that did not have a good relationship. And whether it was learning anger, how parents deal with things with anger, or other dysfunctional ways, methods. So now you're dealing with a situation that someone's had bad role modeling, did not have a healthy environment and a nurturing one, which also leads to being insecure and lack of confidence and self-esteem, which can never help in a relationship. So now you have to deal with the facts on the ground. That's a perfect example of dealing with here and now. Now, obviously, you can't blame someone. It wasn't your fault. It was not you that you're a product of, I don't want to say a victim, but a product of your environment. But the reality is, parents messed it up for this person. Now the parents can say, well, my parents also didn't have a good relationship. So it becomes this vicious cycle. We as human beings, as I discussed many times, are not trapped. You can stop every vicious cycle. It takes work, but you can stop it. So to go back to the topic, the way we look at our life narrative, our story of our lives, is mostly in the here and now. Like someone say to you, tell me your life story. You'll probably begin by saying what you do, what work you do. If you give the whole resume, you'll tell me your education, where you went to school, your early education, later education, and basically you're going to talk about the choreography of your life is going to be around your work, your education, and your home and upbringing. Is that really your life narrative? That's what you know about. That's what you're conscious of. Most people, hopefully, are conscious of and aware of the facts on the ground. But a true life narrative is really the deeper choreography, the deeper story, which would include, of course, things like, why are you here? Are you living up to your potential? Do you have a calling, a mission? That's much more than just the sum of the parts of your so-called resume or trajectory of your life. Your trajectory really comes down. I was born in this and this year, this is my birth date, and you can give me a quick biographical sketch of your life, which is not wrong. It's just a very surface and superficial level of defining your life. So how much do we know about our inner narrative? Almost nothing, to be very honest. Now, some of us know a little more, some of us know a little less. We usually go there when things aren't working, as I said. So then you start saying, one second, what's missing? Like, why do I feel not content? Why am I not building healthy relationships? Why am I not happy at work? We start looking at ourselves. And then you start digging. And that digging usually comes up with all kinds of interesting facts and episodes in your life that may then say, one second, here's an event that happened in my life that I've never really paid attention to, that happened to be maybe a major factor that shaped the rest of your life. But this is how we work. We work so-called from the outside in, and we dig only when necessary. In truth, as I'll try to hopefully convey here, it should be the other way around. The real story is your inner story. The outside story, meaning where you grew up, or what school, or what home, what work you do, is part of your life, but it's more the expression of your being, not your essence of your being. So that's why it's very appropriate to talk about in a day like this, because Rashbi represented exactly that, the inside story. Because just like in our lives, there's an outside story and an inside story, and we can even call it the body of our lives and the soul of our lives. Just like everything has a body and a soul, and I don't mean necessarily in a spiritual or a religious context. When you look at pages in a book, the pages and the words are the body. The ideas and the sentiments is the soul. So you ever hear someone reads a book or watches a movie or something? So of course there's a plot and there's a story, but then there's a story behind the story, between the lines. What you get away from, what you derive, the takeaway. And certain films or books really touch us deeply because it resonates, either a moving story or a romantic story or a humorous, whatever it may be. So the deeper you look into it, some good storytellers tell you more than just the story. They develop characters and plots and the intricate complexities of relationships. That's what real good stories are. They're not just a bunch of facts, an interesting thing. This guy went on a train and they went to work and so on. It's personality based. And the more those personalities are developed, the best authors are the ones that develop excellent personalities, but most importantly, resonating personalities. Again, I'm not talking now science fiction or something cartoon-like, which also has profound messages. But there it could be a little exaggerated, something that you may not relate to. But there's always a message. There's always a story that we relate to. And stories elicit that element. The good stories are really inside stories. They give you an insight into the human condition that you wouldn't have figured out on your own. That's why it's compelling. If you watch a movie or read a book and everything there is obvious that you've already heard 1,000 times, you probably won't even finish the book. But you read it and you start seeing, one second, it's giving me a new take on different issues, a new angle, a new approach, etc. So that's really what an inside story is. So who is the master? So we have the Torah. We also have two dimensions. We have the body of the Torah. That would be the laws of Torah that many Jews who are traditional or familiar with tradition know. Shabbat comes Friday evening at sundown, certain point, we don't do any work here, the work you don't do. If you look into a Shulchan Aruch, a code of Jewish law, these are the laws. And here are the prayers we say, and this is the things that you eat, and these are the meals, and the whole Shabbos experience. We're coming from Passover a few weeks ago. Passover, of course, is a whole series of new intricate laws. And every holiday has its set of laws, has its recipes, has its customs. Different communities have different customs. I'm not going into the details. But all of that goes under one umbrella, which is the body of Judaism, the body of Torah. It's like the mechanics. Just like you have in an operator's manual of a machine, you have the mechanical elements. But it doesn't tell you a lot about the soul. What's the meaning behind? What is Shabbos really about? Is it just not refraining from working? Is it just eating cholent and not carrying money? Is that really the story? Obviously not. Those are the technicalities, but there's a whole story behind it. An example I always use, because it's a very easy example to understand, is imagine you looked at musical notes and you had no idea what they are. You see this gibberish, squiggles on a piece of paper, and someone shows it to you. You have no clue what it is. You think it's as I said, gibberish, meaningless. Then suddenly someone sits down at a piano or another instrument and reads the notes and starts playing, and you say, what are they reading? And you realize that these are just, the body is the musical notes, but they carry a story. And someone who knows how to read those notes, it's only magic. You start hearing music, you'd never believe it's coming from those notes. Now, obviously, the notes don't create the music. The notes are just so-called signs, like signposts that are telling us. But the same is true when we read a book or we read anything, a beautiful poem. So it's words, but the words are conveying a sentiment, a feeling, a thought, an insight. So that's body and soul. Judaism is exactly like that. And what I just said, actually, we have all now honored Rashbi, because in the Zohar, Rashbi teaches exactly that. Rashbi, again, is the acronym Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. I'm just saying it for short. So what does he say? That there's a Gufa Daresh, there's the body of Torah, and there's the soul of Torah. Unfortunately, most Jews today know about the body. I should say some Jews don't even know about the body. But most Jews that know Torah know the body of Torah, and they know very little about the soul. I always tell the story, because it's just such a powerful story. When I was in Santa Cruz years ago, when I went there for my book tour to Meaning for Life. So I was in Santa Cruz. Any of you been to Santa Cruz? So Santa Cruz is a very spiritual, quaint little town, situated like an hour south of San Francisco. And it has its own climate. It's like between the Pacific and the mountains. It's a very beautiful place, very soulful. A lot of Jews there, you can tell. Get into another time, we'll discuss how you can tell, but I could tell. Anyway, I spoke at a bookstore called Gateways, not the Jewish Gateways, the New Age bookstore. I forgot the main street's name is Main Street. I forgot what the name of the main street is. And it was very interesting. A few hundred people were there. Very comfortable, sitting on the couches, sitting on the floor was a carpet. A very intimate setting, very comfortable, very informal, which I liked. After my talk, a woman gets up, question-answer session, and she says, I grew up in Borough Park, Brooklyn, and I went to Beis Yaakov schools. I can see from that, from what she said, and from her, that she was grew up in a very, very religious home. And she says, but by the age 17, I left home never to return. See, I grew up, she said, in a very angry home. Everything about Judaism was negative. Negative energy, fear, anger, punishment, punitive God, guilt, neurosis. It was all that. My parents were very Holocaust survivors. My father was angry. My mother was even angrier. That's the environment. It was toxic, which I didn't know as a child. When I would ask questions and challenge, I was always told to shut up. So I was silenced. Don't ask questions, just be a nice Yiddish Mädel, which means a good Jewish girl, grew up like your mother and grandmother, and stop asking questions. She was seen as a troublemaker, as a rebellious, quote unquote. When really it was just an innocent spirit, as she put it, asking questions. She wasn't malicious. Well, she said at some point, my soul, these were the words I remember vividly, this is years ago, my soul was asphyxiated. You know what asphyxiated is? Suffocated. I couldn't, and I finally decided I'm leaving. She had a large family, I think she said 11 children maybe. She left, said I went to the West Coast. I'm sure my parents sat shiva for me, but I never looked back. And I discovered my God, not in Judaism. I discovered it in Zen Buddhism and in a thing called LSD. If you don't know what it is, it's fine too. What? Psychedelics, if you want it more in more glitzy terms. And I moved up then to San Francisco, Haight-Ashbury, then ended up finally in Santa Cruz. And I found my peace. I found my God. I don't look back. I'm a very happy person. I haven't seen a rabbi like you, she said, in years. I don't know, she said 20 years or something. From the way she described it, it sounded like she was from the late 60s, was her teen years, when she's describing her story. She says, and you talk about God and soul so comfortably and very personally. Where'd you get this from? I mean, you seem like a kind guy, loving guy. Where'd you get this from? It's not the Judaism I grew up with. It was exactly her question. And I saw from the faces and the silence that suddenly entered the room that this question many people had. Everybody has their story. I don't know if it's exactly this story, but everybody's got a similar story. Where, your alienation or disorientation, and then finally finding something or not finding. So quickly I said to her, listen, we Jews have a thing called the 613-step program. Okay, so she smiled and said, okay, I understand that. But afterwards, we had this conversation. She and a few other people remained. We had one of these marathon talks into the wee hours. You know those? Like 3, 4 o'clock, talking about everything. From infinity and beyond to beyond. And it was a very moving, the store closed at 2 a.m., I think, or 1:30. We went outside and said the weather was beautiful, and we just walked. It was just a really very interesting, bonding, personal experience, and it was very gratifying on all levels. And I said to her, to the others that were there, I'm not going to judge you. First of all, I'm not a judgmental person, which she also surprised her, because all she grew up with judgment. Everything was judgment. She said, if you don't judge someone, something's wrong with you. Anyway, so I said, I'm not going to judge you. I don't know what I would do if my soul was asphyxiated. So I'm not here to tell you what you did was right or wrong. You did what you did. You did what you needed to survive, to thrive, to grow, to breathe. But I will tell you this, and I have to tell this to you, that they only shared with you half of the Judaism, and that is the body of Torah. So you rejected the body. They never told you about the soul. And for some reason, a parable came to me that I had heard, I don't know where, when God created the nightingale, because this is a really powerful way to understand Lag BaOmer and Rashbi, this story. When God created the nightingale, which is a bird with a beautiful voice, so the nightingale came to God and said, thank you for giving me such a beautiful voice. However, I may be perched on a branch one dusk and serenading into the night, and everyone will be enjoying the music. But one hungry predator looking for a meal will be attracted to me, a piece of meat on the branch. So God, please give me something to protect myself from my enemies. So God offered the bird a beak, a sharp beak. The bird inspected the merchandise and said, no. A little elegant, beautiful bird like me with a nose like that, no. Okay. So then God offered the bird sharp claws, which is another form of defense. And for the same reason, it's not becoming, it's not manicured well enough. So finally God says to the bird, okay, I'll give you a set of wings. The bird never saw wings before. Looks at the wings, sees 2 pieces of flesh. I have enough body weight with me, the bird said. I don't understand. You're the master of the universe, created with such design. Well, how is this going to help me? I have enough body weight. You give me 2 extra pieces of dead weight, they'll just cause me to weigh me down further, and how will I escape my enemies? So of course God said, no, little bird. These are called wings. In Hebrew, knafayim. When you learn to use them, you can soar. And you can fly to places that you can never reach on your own. You'll be able to escape any enemy. So that's the story of wings, where wings came from. So I said, Judaism has many obligations, more than anyone can imagine. You just open up a code of Jewish law, Shulchan Aruch, or a Talmud. You won't believe the intricate details. If you grew up in a home or an environment where where it's really taken seriously, it can be, especially Passover, an OCD experience. That's not to be confused with LSD, but it's another acronym. And every detail, how you wake up, how you go to sleep, how you love, sexuality, marriage. It even tells you what order to cut your nails. Did you know that? Or what order to tie your shoelaces. So everything seems regulated. So if you think about it, it's a lot of body weight. And you start saying to you, what do I need all this for? Does God really care if I put on a switch on Shabbos? Or if I carry something in my pocket? Or if I eat a crumb of bread on Passover? What is this? So that's the body of Judaism, body weight, a lot of dead weight. But then when you learn how to play the music, the musical notes come alive, then suddenly this weight is not weight. These are tools, they're instruments, they're wings. They're wings that let you reach places you can never reach on your own. And there's a discipline for that. Just like a student of music needs to sit and practice, as uncomfortable as it is and as overwhelming as it sometimes can be, you can't do other things. That's how you master it. And then you play, then you can reach the stars and beyond. Nothing comes that easy, especially beautiful things. So if someone were to offer you 100 pounds of stones, carry it from here to here, and it's yours, you'll say, what do I need it for? But if I offered you 100 pounds of diamonds, what would you say? You say, give me 200 pounds. Now, 100 pounds of diamonds don't weigh less than 100 pounds of stone. So what's the difference? The difference is very simple. The stones are worthless. You don't need them. The diamonds are precious. So it overshadows any effort. You don't even think about the effort. Say, give me 200 pounds. Give me 500 pounds. You'll figure it out because you don't care about the weight. You see the value. So it's worth the effort. That's exactly the story. If you knew it was wings, who would give up their wings? Which bird on earth would want wings? The saddest thing to see is a bird that's grounded and can't fly. Even sadder is imagine a bird that has wings and doesn't know it has them. So this is what I shared with others. Let me tell you what happened. She started crying. I started crying. Everybody started crying. It was a crying session. There was good tears, actually. Nobody was uncomfortable. Because it was a moving moment, and she elicited from me, and I shared this metaphor. She said these words. She says, why didn't anyone tell me this? So I said, well, I'm here to tell this to you now, 20 years later. Fine. So we correspond. I'm trying to convince her to go back to Borough Park and I said, and influence 17-year-olds like she was and teach them now what you didn't know then. Teach them. She is not ready to do that yet, but it's fine. It's a pleasant dialogue that we have, debate if you wish. The point I want to make is this is Rashbi, and that's why he's honored till this day, because they were great sages, and they all taught us important things. And we remember Rabbi Akiva, and we remember Rava, and we remember Abaya, and we remember Shammai and Hillel and Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar, the whole Talmud, all the great sages. But there are certain individuals that transcend time and space because they connect to the soul. Rashbi was not just a body man, so to speak, teaching us the body of Judaism, how to write the notes and what those notes mean, but how to play the music. And that endures. And it's interesting, Rashbi, and only one other man in history, Isaac Luria, the Arizal, in the 16th century, another great mystic, in some ways unite the entire Jewish people like no other sages did. Sephardim have their great leaders. Ashkenazim have theirs. Hasidim have their rebbes. Non-Hasidim Litvaks have their teachers and Rosh Hashiva. But there were two people that stood out, that united everybody. And they were both mystics because they both were soul. Soul, you see, transcends differences. When it comes to customs, some Sephardim eat rice on Passover. Ashkenazim don't. And it's not because they're doing something wrong. That's their custom. They didn't have the issue that Ashkenazim had with confusing rice, kidney as it's called, and with grain because it was all mixed together or was confusing. And there are many things that distinguish us. Again, it's not divisive, just different. Actually, it's very beautiful. Diversity, it's a mosaic. Different colors, different tribes. It says when the Jews went through the parting sea, each tribe had its path. But then there are uniting common denominators. When you talk about the soul, that unites. I have to mention one more person who was this way. It was Aaron, the high priest. Now you could say, why didn't you say Moses? It says Moses loved Jews in ways that no one ever loved. He loved everyone unconditionally. But Moses was a man of God. He was a prophet. He was a teacher. He was an authority. So it says something interesting in the Torah. You know what it says? That when Moses passed away, it says, Vayifku, they cried, all the children of Israel, all the sons of Israel. When Aaron passed away, it says, all the people of Israel. And it says because Aaron was involved on the ground level. He would go and make actually peace between husband and wife, between people, friends who were feuding. So everybody sensed Aaron's presence in their personal lives because he actually helped them. Moses obviously was the greater of the two in the sense, but Moses was more of the man from the mountain, man of God, like, beyond everybody. And everyone was a man of the people. And it's interesting, all yahrzeits that I just mentioned, Aaron, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, and Arizal, when are they all? Do you know? Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is in the sad time of the counting of them when there are no weddings because of the epidemic I mentioned. When is the Arizal's yahrzeit? The 5th of Av. Literally 4 days between the 9 days, the saddest time of the Jewish calendar. And when is Aaron's yahrzeit? Rosh Chodesh Av. So they're all, interestingly, the antidotes to the worst times in the Jewish calendar are unifying people. Because the destruction of the temple came because of divisiveness, sinas chinam, and the destruction, mini destruction in this period in time, also came as a result of not honoring one another. And who was the antidote? The people who reconnected us to the soul. Because the soul is the solution. You and I may be very different, and I mean that to everyone here. But when we go to the soul level, we connect because of our destinies are connected. Our story is connected. And this brings me back to discovering your inside story. Your inside story is the story of your soul, not the story of your body. That's the single most important thing you have to remember. But we are body people. We think through the lens of our bodies, not through the lens of our souls. A day like this gives us power to change that perspective. And it's a very different type of perspective. And I'll give you practical examples of how one who looks through the lens of the soul and one looks through the lens of the body. But before we get to the examples, it's fundamentally different because then you look from the inside out and the other person looks from the outside in. If you talk from the lens of the body, my body's hungry now, give me food. My body's tired, I want to sleep. I'm seduced by something I see, I want it and I want it now. The different pleasures, the different distractions. Someone's texting me, I got a text. That's how the body thinks. It's all about instant gratification. It's moment, on the moment. Body does not think ahead because it thinks about its needs. It's self-indulgent. A soul is the exact opposite. It always reflects and says, is there something I need in my life? Is it important? Is it going to be destructive? It maybe give me pleasure now, but what will happen tomorrow? How long will it last? So you have two voices inside of you. We'll call one the impulsive body voice, and the other one is the reflective soul voice. So whenever you have that battle, and everyone has it all the time, someone says, wait, we need you tomorrow 6 a.m., we're going to visit some sick people, but we have to go 6 a.m. So your body will say, listen, 6 a.m. is early, I got to sleep. Maybe you can find somebody else. Your soul will say, 1 second. Yes, it may be not so comfortable, you get up a little earlier than usual, but the rest of the day, the rest of your life, this may be, you'll never forget this moment. So the moment may not be so pleasant, but long term is very pleasant. And the other way around is, yes, you'll get your sleep that morning, but how long is that sleep going to last? You need to sleep tomorrow night again? Anyway. This is how we think, and we're constantly making such choices. The training of the Torah teaches us is to try to train us to think as the soul would see things, not as the body sees things. But it's not easy because the body has a far more compelling case. You're hungry. I have no time to wait right now. I'm hungry and I don't want to wait till I reflect why I'm going to eat. I see something and that's that. So it requires a discipline. It requires patience. It requires all the virtues, frankly, that are also admirable. We don't just jump on things. And everything has deeper meaning. On a deeper level, the soul thinks like this. You come somewhere. You're here at this class tonight. Why are you here tonight? So it could be a friend told you about it. It could be someone schlepped you here. It could be you just, by accident, went to the wrong building, I don't know if that's the case, but I know online's that way. Someone told me this morning that they're flipping around on the internet. They happen to see me. Anything could happen on the internet. So we all have reasons why we are in different places. The same thing, where you're going to be tomorrow morning, where will you be tonight? Now you may have a business meeting that brings you there. It may be an opportunity, it may be a vacation, it may be entertainment, whatever the reasons that your body will tell you, these are all body reasons. The soul never thinks like that. It thinks in terms of, why was I brought here? I may think I came here for a business meeting, but maybe there's a higher reason for me to connect with someone here. The soul will look for spontaneous things. It won't go by plan always. It will look, I may be here for many reasons, but maybe the main reason I don't even know about. And the soul will see things that the body doesn't see. Because if you're just focused on what the reason you came in there, so you go in to get a coffee somewhere, so the body tells you, I need a coffee, so you get the coffee, you sit 15 minutes, you drink the coffee. But the soul will say, maybe you should meet somebody here today, and they should meet you. So you strike up a conversation with someone. You're sitting there near a plane. So you think it's random accident, but the soul never sees anything as a random accident. Everything's part of a choreography. To put it in the words of the mystics, I'm using Rashbi's words, and that Arizal elaborates, that we are all allocated divine sparks in our lifetimes. And the places we will travel to, and the people we will meet, and the opportunities that will come our way, and even our personality. Why are you artistic and someone else is more cerebral? Emotional and cerebral. Artistic and more mathematical, analytic. Why is that? Because it's part of your sparks that were given to you, allocated to you, and you have many of them waiting for you to do something with them. And only you can accomplish something. That's how the soul thinks. So the soul is very deliberate, very thinking ahead, always looking at the bigger picture, never focused on the moment. The body is always the moment. Someone says something that ticks you off, you right away get all upset. And you react. How many mistakes do we make because we don't reflect? React, and later you say, oh yeah, I shouldn't have said that, The soul will always reflect on the big picture. But as I said, we're not trained to think like souls. We think like bodies. Even good people do. It doesn't always mean bad. We just think in very narrow terms. We don't think about the big picture. We don't think about what's the story behind the story. So on a day like this, it helps us focus on that dimension. So last week I spoke a lot about the concept of the three so-called meanings in the word visfartem in last week's chapter. Visfartem means to count, the counting of the Omer. It also means to tell a story. Sipur in Hebrew means to relate a narrative. And it also comes from the word sapphire, sapir in Hebrew, which refers to illumination. We discussed how when we look at things, we always begin at looking at the outer, we're always accounting for. It's always something that's measurable. That's how we do things. We measure things empirically with our sensory tools. I see it, I hear it, I taste it, touch and smell. I touch it, I smell it. That's the tools that we have that are ostensible tools. So everything begins with that. But that's not the story. That's just the outer, as I said, the body of it, the surface. So then that leads us to the next step where we discover there's a story here. It's more than just statistics and figures, facts and figures. As I gave an example, even on a business level, you'll see two people look at numbers, and one will just see numbers rising and falling, and the other one will see the inside story. And they say, uh-oh, there's something really coming here. It could be stock market, it could be weather fluctuations, it could be other numbers. A trained eye looks at numbers and sees a story. An untrained eye sees numbers, sees them numbers. Doesn't mean it doesn't tell you anything, but doesn't tell you everything. And then there's the third dimension we spoke about, which was transparency. It's not just a story, you see a narrative unfolding. You see a big, the whole choreography of something. Now, if we're blessed and we really work hard, we can end up seeing the big picture of our lives. But what's expected of us is to at least go from the facts and figures. As I said before, most people can tell you their resume, they'll tell you where they lived and what they did and what they're doing now. You ask most people, who are you? They give you their business card. But that's what you do, it's not who you are. But you so identify with, our identities are so bound with what we do, that we think who we are is what we do, which is why so many people, their self-worth is defined by their net worth. How important and valuable are you? Depending what others think of you. Youth, looks, productivity, buying power, status. There's a bunch of benchmarks that we look at that someone says, oh, you're in that bracket. But what about if there's no one else around? What do you stand for without others measuring? So that requires going into your who are you, not just what you do, and not just what you do for others. How many of us are pleasers? We're always concerned pleasing somebody else. We're satisfying other expectations. We don't want to disappoint. And someone says, when's the last time you did something that just came from your inner voice? And the saddest thing you hear from some people, they say, you know what, I don't even know the last time I did something with my inner voice. I live in a world and a life that everything is expected of me, everything is demanded. I never was given, no one even asked me about what I think. There is that phenomenon. It's not so uncommon, actually. Now, who was it that said, I think it was, this quote is a tremendous quote. Do I have it here? I just remember, I'm paraphrasing. It's like, I think it was the Voiceless, a poem written by Oliver Wendell Holmes, maybe. The Voiceless. And there's a line there, it's a devastating line. He says, most people, he said, die with their song still inside them. You know, it's quite sad to hear that. So we have a song. It's even more than a story. It's a song. And we don't even know we have it. We don't even know we have that voice. Now, sometimes by accident, well, there's no accident, but we think it's an accident. Or sometimes, with unplanned, something of your voice suddenly emerges. You know, there's a crisis, there's a need, and suddenly you're there, and you're able to do something. Because frankly, how do we discover our talents anyway? Nobody gives you a list of, like, you know, at age 15, here's the list of all your talents. We definitely don't get it when we come out of our mother's womb. God doesn't send, here's who you are, and here's what your strengths are. We discover it by trial and error. And sometimes it takes years. And sometimes you discover things years later in your life that you didn't even know you had the strength. And very often we have strengths that were suppressed. We were told not to ask them. Parents criticized us. How many children stopped living, stopped dreaming, and stopped imagining because their parents told them stop being a fantasist, stop living in fantasy. One of the saddest things, children are dreamers. It's part of growth. It's part of the spirit's experimentation with the enchantment of life is to dream. Obviously, we have to then figure out how to fulfill those dreams, but to stop someone from dreaming, from idealism, to say, hey, a cynic will say, yeah, I was also once so idealistic. Don't get so excited. We have many friends, I'm sure, that know how to throw cold water on a moment of inspiration. But this is all the Spirit working, trying to explore and see the bigger picture. Another way to put it is this. The book of Proverbs says, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. The soul of a human being is the flame of God. So the closest approximation to what your soul looks like is a flame, which is why flames are so prominent. Lag BaOmer too, actually. But in Judaism, you have the menorah in the temple. We light Shabbos candles. We light Hanukkah candles. Even, God forbid, upon death, a yahrzeit candle. Why a flame? Because a flame is the only physical object that we can see with our eyes that transcends and defies gravity. Obviously, helium does, and helium balloons, but you don't see it unless it's in a balloon. When you look at a flame, everything falls, a flame rises. And it's only due to the wick that it keeps it grounded. A flame is always flickering. And what it represents is transcendence. Everything in life, as I said, is affected by the gravitational pull, just physically and also metaphorically. That tugs us down. One of the Rebbes, that Tzemach Tzedek, his name was, Torah Chabad Rebbe, was once playing with other children on a ladder. And all the other children were afraid to climb to the top. And he climbed to the top. So his grandfather said to the little boy, why were you the only one that had the courage to climb? So he said, very simple. Zayda, grandpa. When the other children climbed, they kept looking down. So they saw how high they were. They were afraid to climb higher. When I was climbing, I kept looking up. So I saw how low I was, and it motivated me to climb higher. So the body looks down. You're around people that are less accomplished than you. So your ego tells you, hey, I don't have to do anything. I already accomplished more than all of these people. But when you're around people that are more accomplished than you, you look up, which is what the soul does. You say, hey, look how many more horizons there are to conquer. And that motivates you to want to get there. Now, many of us like the comfort zone, so we'll look down, as I said before. So the soul has many, many other features and attributes and personality elements that can indicate that voice inside of us. Now, we have both voices, as I said. But as the voice of the soul is that really the story of your life. The soul connects things. The body separates things. Just like two bodies in a room can't occupy the same seat because bodies occupy time and space. And the cardinal law of physical existence is two things can't occupy the same time and space. Souls don't have that issue. You could be sitting near somebody for hours and not even talk to them. You could be separated from a person 1,000,000 miles apart, but you love them with such intensity that as if they're right inside of you. Because souls transcend time and space. If I give you a piece of my food, I have less food. Give you some money, I have less money. That's material. Souls only get stronger. Like a flame doesn't get diminished when it shares a flame with another flame. As a matter of fact, they get stronger because the two flames together will be more powerful. So you have here an entity that becomes greater as it gives, where the body becomes greater only when it takes. You know, you have the story of the guy, this Jewish guy, a stingy guy. So he's drowning in the water, in the ocean, the sea, God forbid. And his two friends come to save him. So one says, Jack, give me your hand. And he refuses to stretch out his hand. Jack, give me your hand. You're going to drown and die. No. So his other friend says, Jack doesn't know how to give. Tell him to take your hand. He says, Jack, take my hand. And then he stretched out his hand. Now, some people are very good at taking, and some people are good and not good at giving. So, actually, I think the story is the other way around, right? I should have said the other way around. Okay, you get this story. Take. No. Take my hand. Yeah, that's what he wanted. Take. So we are all, we tend to like to be more takers than givers, because whatever, it's usually due to insecurity and confidence and lack of confidence. People who have certain self-confidence, they have no problem giving, because they're not going to get diminished. But if you think that every piece of property or everything that's yours, you hoard and you hold on to it because that's what gives you value, obviously you're going to be very difficult for you to give away a piece of your flesh that you think is so important to your confidence. People who have that inner confidence have far less difficulty in coexisting and so on. So the story really, the soul story of our lives, is simply requires us to be conscious and aware in all decisions we make. Is this a body decision? Is it a soul? That's how you begin. You begin by asking yourself, next time something comes up, and it will come up every moment, will come up another choice, moral choice you have to make. But sometimes bigger choices. Ask yourself, who's speaking? I'm not even relevant here who's going to win the argument. But as soon as you begin to ask yourself, you're already giving a voice to your soul. Because unfortunately the soul, with all its strengths, is so sublime, it doesn't have the arrogance and the noise that your body makes. Your body tells you very clearly when it's hungry and thirsty and impatient and seeking pleasure, seeking some instant gratification. The soul's voice is far more subtle, far more wise, far less respected in this world. So you need to give it time. You need to give it a voice. It doesn't have the same type of aggression that the body does. That's our call. So the next time you have to make a choice, ask yourself this question: who's speaking? Your body may still prevail because temptations are temptations, but at least you've opened the door for another voice. And you'd be surprised, once you open the door, the soul will work its way, but you have to do one thing: you have to allow it to speak. Think of it like a communist kangaroo court, where only the prosecutor can speak and the defense never allowed to speak. Right? You have to allow the second voice to speak, because actually it could be the difference between life and death, spiritually speaking, and the difference between what your real story of your life or your superficial one. So when many people actually document their lives, you'll find it's quite superficial to the point of embarrassment. When I was younger and a little more, I would say not only the word callous, but less tactful and less diplomatic, I once asked somebody to write down for me their story because they wanted me to help them with something. They had difficulties working out an issue, personal. And it was a mistake. I should never have asked them to write down because they came back so depressed, almost suicidal. Because the guy said, you asked me to write down, my life is not very nice to look at. I'm basically involved most of the time in superficial things. So, my excuse was, I said to him, I didn't think you'd actually do it. And I thought that, when you start doing it, it'll be uncomfortable, so you won't continue. But he did. I guess he respected me, so he did it. It's not so simple. If someone were to ask you, how much time did you waste today? Not comfortable. No, most people do not want to have that question asked. How many hours did you play a video game, or how many hours did you just procrastinate? Now, it's human nature. We all do those things, so it's not like something to be terribly embarrassed of. But when you start accumulating and adding up, we have a lot of free time, let's be honest. And the problem is we don't have focus, so we don't know what to do with it. So some people place that free time into business, making money. I know people who actually count how much they make a second. That way every second is accounted, like every second is worth so much and so much money. Okay, but that at least gives them motivation in that regard. But again, with money at the end of the day, how much, everybody wants to have some leisure, some time you kick your shoes off and just lean back. And I'm not suggesting we don't deserve that. But it's important to also have those real moments, real transcendent moments. Because those are the ones that you'll never forget. The moment you fall in love. I'm talking about healthy, serious love. Not just some crush or infatuation. The moment a child is born. The moment you experience some epiphany. These are moments, but they last forever. You know why? Because they're soulful moments. Those are sacred moments. And they happen much more often than you think they do, except we're not open to it because we're so busy in the rush hour of our lives. You all know the story with Joshua Bell, the great violinist, in the Washington terminal. He tried an experiment. It's a true story. One of the greatest world violinists. He had a Stradivarius, one of the most expensive and rare violins worth over $1 million. He sat himself down, not in Carnegie Hall, not in Lincoln Center, not in the Kennedy Center. He sat himself down in a subway station. In the Washington, like here, the equivalent to Grand Central Station here, or Times Square, whatever. Where thousands of people in the morning are running. He sat himself down on a milk box and began to play. He began to play songs that people would pay $1,000 tickets, $1,500 tickets. Here's Joshua Bell sitting, playing violin, and with a video camera. He had a hidden video camera there. Everybody rushes by. Nobody notices at all. And he's playing beautiful, beautiful music. Who's the only one that noticed it? You won't believe it. A 5-year-old child is running, a mother or father taking the child to school or something, and the child is just like mesmerized. And the mother schleps the child and says, "Come, we have no time, we're going to miss the train." That's the only one that noticed. Interesting, right? Why? Very simple. If there's a rush hour, let's say you're listening to a very beautiful piece of violin, but suddenly you hear the horns honking and the brakes screeching, rush hour. So someone starts playing blasting music. You're not going to hear the fine strings or the fine tune because it's drowned out on a physical level. So the question now is, how much rush hour is occupying our spirits right now? What's going on in your head? How much time do we fight demons and fears and insecurities, real or imagined? It's again one of those things that very few of us really are aware of. But we have overly populated and overstimulated, much overstimulated minds and hearts because it's inundating us all the time in our day and age. This was God sending an example. Okay? I was once speaking at a Shabbaton Friday night in Karbach Shul, and after dinner they served the chicken. And right at the beginning of my talk, we suddenly hear this call of a rooster. So of course the joke was maybe there was a chicken running around. They didn't slaughter for the Shabbos meal. But then we found out that some roosters sound like cell phones. So I had what to talk about. We are inundated. Statistics show by the time you're age 20 in the Western world, you have seen 1 million advertisements. 1 million. Now, we don't think much of it, so it's a big thing. But it means something was registered. Remember, advertisers don't waste money. They're spending money because it affects us. Drink this and you'll feel better. Look like this and you'll feel sexier. Travel here, smoke this. The list goes on. No one's going to send you an ad that says, birth is God saying you matter. You're valuable. Why? Because there's nothing to sell you. They have to sell you a product to make you feel valuable. So tell me, in a society like ours, how could it not be that we're going to feel inadequate somewhere? There's so much going on. And 1 million products, you couldn't have bought 1 million products. And then you see someone else has it. Oh. These things affect our psyches subtly. It's subliminal, but it affects. You start reading of the science behind the supermarkets, the colors, the smell, the exact temperature. We're not talking about Vegas, is a whole other story. Once you get into those clutches, the oxygen that's pumped, there's no clocks. You'll see money disappears, it's all chips. It's all illusions, huh? No windows. Right, no distractions. So we live in artificial and we buy into it. And I'm not saying this as a critique, it's just like we are inundated. That's why it's a shock when you go out to the woods and you're out of cell phone reception. Many people tell me they have major anxiety over that. You're suddenly dealing with nature and there's nothing else. Some people say that's healthy today. And they're monetizing that too now. But the point I'm making here is we live in a world that has a lot of noise. And the noise is in here, and the noise is in here, and the noise out there, all noise. So is it surprising that it's hard for us to find our inside story, our soul? Of course the soul is going to be drowned out in the process. It's impossible. So there's only one solution. That's up to us. You have to some way quiet down those outer noises so to allow the voice to come out. Now this isn't just some abstract exercise. As I said, it comes down to asking yourself the question, why am I here? Maybe I should have a nice warm conversation with the person I'm sitting with, even if they're a stranger. Maybe I should give somebody a gift. I'll tell you a story. There was I don't want to say his name because of confidential reasons, a high-powered executive living in New York. He told me this story himself. He was known as a real shark. Very successful, but he was a cutthroat businessman. Someone gave him a copy of my book, Torah, Meaningful Life. And in it, he was reading it. Somebody touched his soul. And it said there a few things. It said there that one of the ways to bring so-called refinement, a little soulfulness in your life, is not just to give charity at the end of the day or once a year or whatever, but to have a charity box on your desk, your office desk, where you do deals. It's like a reminder of giving, not just taking. So he decided, he's going to put a charity box on this thing. Which, of course, evoked questions. People had meetings with him. What's this box doing here? He says, you know what? Why don't we all give charity before every meeting? They put in 5 cents. We're not talking about sums here, large sums. Then he decided, you know what? He's going to give out a copy of my book to everybody that comes. So he would have a box in the corner. He says, it changed not just my life, my business, people. They never saw me this way. A person who's thinking more about life. I says, as a matter of fact, it helped my business. Because people started trusting, saying, you know what? Oh, this guy's he has a life. Which till now, all he was a businessman. It was about a business deal. And he says, so bringing a soulfulness is not so complicated. It's just not allowing your routines and patterns of yesterday to control your life. And this man's life changed completely. Because then he met somebody through my book, he gave a producer in a film. That opened up a whole nother opportunity. And he's still a businessman. I think he's retired now. But I saw with my own eyes. I'll give you another story. I told this story a number of times. So a guy used to come to this class very often. And he used to sit in the back. It wasn't in this room. It was in a different place. He was an interesting looking guy. But, people come. I never know who's who. They want to come speak to me. I'm always accessible. But I'm not going to impose myself. I said hello to him. After a few months, maybe 6-7 months of him coming almost every week, he comes over to me. He wants to talk to me after the class. Okay, we sit down. And he tells me a story. He says, I can't say his father's name because it's well known. His father's, let's put it this way, from the top billionaires. And he says, I have everything I need in my life, beyond what I need. I have private jets. I have every woman I want. I have any entertainment. I can go anywhere. There's no budget, period. And I have a good relationship with my father. It's not even, he's not controlling of me. But I live in a gilded cage. And this cage surrounds the whole earth. But it's a cage. So I can fly anywhere, but there are bars. And they're made out of gold. That's the way he put it. And I am miserable inside. I don't have real relationships. Everything is whatever I want. I indulge myself in. People also, I never know what they really want from me. It's my money. He was a good-looking guy. I said, but I said, I have no life. I'll never have a life, he said, because I didn't earn this. I didn't even. Some people deceive themselves thinking that he earned it. He didn't even earn it. He says, I get everything I want. But I like your class. I like the way you're thinking and so on. So what do you think? So of course, I asked him, is it possible for you to just not take the money and just live simple? Just say no. I mean, in a nice way. Say, you really want to earn. You're not going to die from hunger, but not to the whole. He says he doesn't think it's possible. He's so accustomed to this. Why would he do that? In other words, I told him, so basically you're not ready to pay that price. If you're not ready to pay that price, that may be this is the price you pay. Your soul is lost. And I don't mean to say it in a bad way, but that's the way, we were talking very openly. Then as we're speaking, I don't know, something came to me. I thought about it as we're speaking. I felt bad for him because he really was sincere. He wasn't looking for excuse. He was really bothering him. How much it bothered him, I don't know. I don't know if he lost sleep over it. But so then suddenly came an idea. I said to him, I have a suggestion. I think you should take a few hours a day, a few hours a week, and volunteer to help these homes for special children. You take a walk with a Down syndrome child, with another child that has the needs. Just a walk. They always could use somebody that will talk to them, will take a walk, be nice, play with them, and so on. He looked at me like I was off the wall completely. He says, I'll hire someone to do that. I said, no. The whole point, what do you mean? I know you could hire someone. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you go do it. The more he argued, the more I realized how it's a good idea, actually. And I said to him, and don't tell me you don't have time, because you have all the time in the world, you know that. So, and he was really resisting. So I said to him, look, you're asking me for a suggestion. I gave you a suggestion. You don't want it, don't do it. But what are you asking me? What do you want me to do? The first suggestion you're definitely not going to do. At least this is not. What do you got to lose? What's going to happen? You just get out of your comfort zone, right? Anyway, to his credit, a little while later, he tells me he's done it. He found himself. I didn't even want to tell him. I didn't want to give him leads. I told him, you figure it out. You're smart enough. Get on the phone and make some calls. And next thing I know, a few months pass, he tells me he's doing it 3 times a week. He says to me, it's unbelievable. He said, these children, first of all, don't know who I am. They don't care who I am. They don't care about money. All they care is about a little love. A little love. I'm learning more from them and getting more love from them than I'm giving them, to be very honest. He's talking about this little boy, Down syndrome, he said. They're just like, so adorable, so vulnerable, but so beautiful. He learned about a soul, a real soul, for the first time. Well, a while later, he came back to me, he said to me, I am going to build a home like this. Because I realize now some of the homes don't have certain resources. I have the money. I'm going to build a special type of, like a template, so to speak, a model, that I'm going to then bring to the other homes and say, here's something you could all incorporate. And this is what his passion is now. What changed? What changed is he was living completely a selfish, body-like existence, and he found his story. But it only comes with his soul. It only comes when you give. It only comes when you go beyond your needs. It goes when you start giving, when you start thinking, why am I here? I mean, even though JFK said this, do not think what you can do, what the country can do for you, but what you can do for the country, it's actually plagiarism. Not that he knew, but the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, said it. Once a guy came to him in a private audience and gave him a whole grocery list of needs. I want Rebbe, give me blessings. I need blessings in parnasa, livelihood, and health, and marriage, and children, and everything. Okay. So the Rebbe looked at him and said, anything else? So he gave a few more things on the list. So then the Rebbe said to him, you're telling me everything that you need. And tell me, what are you needed for? Like, what are you giving? What are you bringing to the table? So it wasn't not taking away, God forbid, that a person needs things. Of course we have needs. But why don't you begin by saying, what are you needed for? Maybe if you can explain why you're here and what your calling is, then these needs will be given to you because you need to fulfill your calling. So the Rashbi reminds us on a day like this how to find our inside story. And that's why he lives on, and that's why he's so relevant, because in our day and age, more than ever, in his time, or even 200, 300 years ago, we didn't have time, we didn't have leisure on our hands. When you have to spend 8 hours a day toiling in a field just to get a sack of potatoes, you don't have time, you're exhausted. There's no time for television and for internet and for texting. And then even then, what am I going to do now? I already did all that. There's no time. I mentioned Adam Rickover's great speech, Admiral. He was an admiral. He's called the father of the nuclear navy. He was actually a Holocaust, came from Europe. And he grew, and at the ranks he became a 4-star In the Navy, 4 stars like a 5 star is the highest. 4-star admiral in the U.S. Navy. In 1955, he gave a talk. He said a statistic which is staggering. Think about this, he says. In 1855 to 1955, here's what changed. 90% of energy generated on Earth were generated by human labor in 1855. And in 1955, 90% of energy is generated by machines. You think about that. 2 main changes happen as a result. 1, the birth of leisure, which we take it for granted, a lot of free time. Because you don't need to travel 100 miles to get a potatoes or tomatoes. You could just press a button today, actually, and it'll be delivered. Amazon delivers within hours today. Anything, out of season, in season, whatever. And the second thing that happened was the obscene growth of wealth. Because those that were in control and pressed the right buttons weren't just wealthier. We're talking about extreme measures, wealth that could never have been imaginable. Now, what do those 2 things do if they're not harnessed with something soulful? You tell me. Give a human being that doesn't have focus and a soulful direction, like a captain of the ship, give him a lot of time and energy, you tell me what usually happens. I think it's pretty obvious. We squander it, and when we squander it, it probably gets very destructive. Why addictions that we know of today? You read books, you don't find addictions 100 years ago. So many people think because they didn't have pot, and they didn't have LSD, or they didn't have ecstasy, or they didn't have cocaine. I don't want to share all my knowledge about every type of drug. And it's not due to experience. I just read, I'm fascinated by it. They had plenty of natural stuff and so on. It's because there was no time for addictions. As I said, you have to survive. It's time for surviving. For Jews in particular, we're running from pogroms, or from communists, or from Nazis, or from crusaders, or from inquisitors, and so on. Now, thank God we're in a new world. But don't think this world doesn't come with challenges. So today, to discover our inner story is a far more greater challenge, but far more necessary. Because if you don't, you will really be swept up and swallowed up and drowned in the deluge of what they call the information revolution. Because it's all over and it's constantly on attack. And it's not, I'm not suggesting, I'm not the paranoid type of saying we have to think in those terms of attack. But it is, it's an assault on our psyche. And it has to take a toll on our relationships, on our search for truth, on our intimacy, on soulfulness, on God. Everything that's real has to be suffering because of this outer deluge, this overwhelming, inundating forces that don't allow us to access that inner part of ourselves. Now, even technology, and I've shared this a number of times, technology is very powerful, but you can turn it around very easily. Not use it. Make sure that you use it more for giving than for taking. Meaning, you send out an email, fine. You're on Facebook, you're on other social media. For every post, for every email, for every text, maybe you should make a decision on this Lag BaOmer to send out for everyone, for personal, entertaining, or whatever business reasons, send out, we'll keep it conservative, 3 that have a positive message, share a warm thought, an inspiring, insightful something with somebody else. That's how you begin. Instead of technology serving you, use it as a tool for illuminating the world around us. And it's very easy to do. You get a nice email, it doesn't cost anything, you just forward it. Create a list. People will appreciate it. I've shared the story of a number of years ago. I was in a Shabbaton, a weekend, which in East Hampton. So I'm driving there Friday afternoon, and I stopped for gas at the station. And after I finished filling up, the attendant, right near there was a parking lot and a club. And the guy that's parking cars there comes over to me and says, "Are you staying for the party?" So I said, "No, not this party. I'm going to another party, a Friday night party, Shabbat party." He starts asking me questions. We just get into a conversation. And he says he's very intrigued by what I do. "What do you do?" I said, "I write about spirituality, psychology." You send out emails? Yes. He gives me his email address. That was that. I go off. After Shabbos, I come back to my office, I give it, and he's getting my emails. Every week, Thursday night. Years passed, maybe 7 years. I don't remember exactly. And I get an email from him. I remembered him, but I never thought I'd ever hear from him. He says, I don't know if you remember me, but I was this parking attendant. Like, maybe from in this hick town. He thought I'm some redneck or whatever. But I happen to be Jewish. And I must tell you, your emails have become my connection. Because I never went to any Jewish schools. Both my parents were killed in a car accident when I was young. I was moved from one home to another. It was a mess. And so I never had any Jewish education. Your emails have become my Rosh Hashanah, my Yom Kippur, my Sukkot. You started listening, my Shabbos, my this. I get your email. It's like my prayer. I pray with it. I think about it. I meditate. I just want you to know this. So we stayed in contact. He actually came here a few years ago to the class. But I realized that without technology, the likelihood that he would come to New York to class, very, very unlikely. An email. So I became, ever since, an obsessive email harvester. I don't know what you call it, hoarder. Where I go over, I get emails. Why? Because I realized, it was press of a button. He gets the email like everybody's getting it, but it's personalized to him, and he's taking it personally. And I realized here's what technology was created for. You never know what kind of connection you can make. And it costs nothing. There's no stamp. You don't have to mail it. It's a press of a button. So no one has an excuse. Technology, its ease, also makes it easy to do something positive with it. And then maybe you come to discover, as Rashbi would teach us, that's why technology was created. Like it says elsewhere, why was gold created? So many people, gold was created so I should enrich myself. No, gold was created to build a temple with gold for God. But then, because of free will, so you could also build a golden calf. We have those two choices all the time. Will we build golden calves? Will we be indulgent? Will we be short-sighted? Or will we look at the bigger picture? And the choice is yours, and it changes your whole life. So you want to find your inner narrative, your inner story, the real soul, and who you really are. It's right there. You don't need any best-selling book. You don't need any music. You don't need anything. It's right inside, sitting right now inside of you is a soul waiting to be released. A soul waiting for some attention. Imagine you find out that you have a little child who's starved for attention, sitting and waiting in a closet for years and years. And you'll say, why didn't anyone tell me it's there? Well, I'm telling you right now it's there. It's the soul inside of you. It's like a child. It needs attention. And it needs watering. It needs nurturing. Like children, they need more than gifts and prizes and trips. They need nurturing. The soul needs to just hear, I know you're there and I'm here to help you, nurture you. In psychology, they sometimes say it's nurturing your inner child. Just telling your child you're there to protect it, to help it grow. Many of our inner children have been hurt and bruised and wounded by our lives. So the soul is like that. It's a voice waiting to be released. It's your song, it's your music. So in a day like this, Lag BaOmer, we look to a day that has power that helps us access that inner dimension. And when it accesses that inner dimension, it brings love instead of divisiveness. Because where do you think love comes from? Love comes from the soul recognizing that we're all connected. We're all musical notes in a large composition. The body doesn't see that. The body sees a bunch of separate things. You're you, I'm me, mine is mine, yours is yours. Sometimes we'll negotiate. You do something for me, I'll do something for you. That's what love doesn't work. Real love is unconditional. Not like the guy that told me, I'll love her unconditionally if she does what I want her to do. I'll love her unconditionally if she loves me unconditionally, Okay. So love is a unifying force that is soulful. That's what it is. It's not just another need. Like he explains in Tanya, chapter 32. If you're familiar with Tanya, powerful statement. He says, love is transcendence of soul over body. As soon as the soul dominates, you have love. As soon as the body dominates, you'll not have love. You may have selfish love. You may have temporary love. Ahava tluya b'davar, a love that's contingent on something, because you want something from someone. But if you want true transcendent love, it's always going to be connected to a soul. It'll be connected that it's not about my body and its physical needs that matter. but it's something more transcendent that matters. It's actually the difference between love being something you give or something you take. Most people see love as a need. I have a need to eat to sleep, and I need love. When you find out love is not a need, but love is something you give, that's when it changes. Now, this doesn't mean it shouldn't be reciprocal, but it's not based on some business negotiation that you do this. It's based on opening up your soul that you're just a giving person. And giving people don't wait till someone gives to them. Now, obviously, you want to not be abused and you don't want it to be used against you. There are people who are just parasites. So you have to have discretion. But a giving person is not naive. A giving person is just a person that is driven from within, from a soulful within. So much more can be said on this, but I hope together with last week's discussion, these are the tools of how to write your narrative or how to access your narrative. And more than your narrative, to really connect to those deepest dimension of all is your soul's energy, your soul's illuminating power to really transform the life you're living right now. It doesn't have to be a different life, but it's a different dimension of life. Then you're living a life fully from inside out instead of outside in. So everyone should have a very happy Lag BaOmer. Like in Judaism, energy, time is energy, so we get energy on this day if you allow it to enter. We always have to do something about it. Nothing's going to happen automatically. Effort is always necessary. So hopefully with a minimal effort, but at least some effort, some small effort on our part will bring a lot of blessings in this day. This day is a major day of blessings, especially in areas where we have blockages, because Rashbi is a opener of doors, as I said, a master of secrets. He teaches the inner. So the inner energies that remain sometimes trapped is a day that this opens up. That's why in this day, it's a special day for shidduchim, for marriages, so anyone that needs to find their soulmate. It's a day that will can open up doors. Or, especially, he would give blessings to barren women who had difficulties, children, infertility.
Is it the whole week or just today?
Today and tonight and tomorrow.
Tomorrow night also?
No, just tonight and tomorrow.
Well, you know what? Why would you push it off till tomorrow night when you have
Tomorrow
today?
night they have events.
Yeah, the blessings continue tomorrow night too, yeah.
After nightfall, the only prayer you can pray is Ma'ariv, right?
Yeah.
You're cursing.
I will intervene with Rashbi to keep the doors open till after Shabbos, okay? So, now this doesn't mean you can't open the door later, it's just easier, obviously, in a day like this. So blessings in shidduchim, blessings in all things that block us in any particular way, including parnasa, income, livelihood. And so it's a day when you open your heart up. Rashbi, it says, protects and sends his blessings to us. Kedai Rashbi, what's the word? That he has the ability to open up, sweeten the severities. Lismach Allah b'shas adchak. That we can rely on him b'shas adchak when things are tough or dire, to open up channels. That's my blessing, and everyone have a very happy Lag BaOmer. We'll be here next Wednesday, as always, 8:15, 8:30, depending on the technologies. And we continue this journey. It's an honor to know you all and to meet you all, I should say. If you haven't left your email address, please do so we can stay in contact. As I said, I'm an email hoarder, and you never know the connections. And everyone have a very blessed Lag BaOmer, a very joyous Lag BaOmer, and a joyous week. I'll see you next week. Be well, everybody.